Hi, my name is Jessica Florence, and this is my second discussion board post for HIUS 512 at Liberty University. The topic for this post is to examine prominent female figures from the American Revolutionary period, and the person that I have chosen to look at is Betsy Ross. Betsy Ross is notably remembered for being the one to come up with the design as well as to create the first American flag. Laurel Thatcher Ulrich notes in her research on Betsy Ross that much of this idea of what Betsy Ross contributed to the American flag is based on oral tradition from her own family. Her grandson, William Canby, in the 1870s, will pass down a story that states that George Washington and two men from the Continental Congress will come to Betsy Ross's upholstery shop in Philadelphia and discuss ideas for creating the American flag. So Washington and the men come with a sketch that outlines the number of stars and stripes to be used, and for each star to have 6 points on it. As the tradition goes, Betsy Ross notes that a 5-pointed star would be easier and more effective, and she proceeds to take a sheet of paper and a pair of scissors and demonstrate that star to Washington and the men. From that point, they like her idea, and she is then credited as the one who comes up with the design for the American flag. Ulrich goes on to explain that a lot of historians have had concerns with this analysis of what happened in creating the American flag. She notes that there is a resolution passed in the Continental Congress in June of 1777, which does give the outline and the design for the flag with the number of stars and stripes to be used in the color schemes. However, there is no explanation as to who was the one who came up with the design. Another historian, John Harker, retells a similar oral tradition. However, for him, he believes that it does support what the Ross family has been stating in their oral tradition of the American flag. So the story that Harker tells comes from Roger Sherman's family. Roger Sherman's wife, Rebecca, learns from Sherman himself that George Washington was having a flag made by Betsy Ross. Roger Sherman was influential in drafting the Declaration of Independence, so this does connect, as far as the time period, George Washington with another prominent figure who would have also known Betsy Ross potentially. So the story is that Rebecca, once she hears that George Washington is making or having a flag made, she goes to Betsy Ross to see the flag, and Betsy Ross allows her to also sew on some of the stars. For Harker, this actually symbolizes that the tradition began much sooner than what the Canby oral tradition states, and that it does link some similarities and does maybe make it seem more accurate that Betsy Ross, at the very least, did make the first flag. As to whether she was the one who came up with the design, he does not address that issue. Another historian, Kim Carey Warren, notes that it's very difficult at this point to be able to determine who actually created the first flag or who came up with the design. There are not primary source documents that are accurate to give that analysis. So instead, Warren chooses to focus on another aspect of how Betsy Ross contributes to the American cause, and that is to view Betsy Ross as a patriot. There is no question that Betsy Ross, for nearly 40 years, created American flags. And for Warren, this signifies something much greater than as to who was the designer or who came up with the idea, but rather that she was a patriot. And that's how, for Warren, Betsy Ross should be remembered in American history, was that she was very patriotic and that she did her duty to serve her country. Betsy Ross, of course, will always be remembered with her connections to the American flag. However, for Warren, it's not so much what she did or didn't do, but the fact that she helped to generate an American identity that would represent freedom, democracy, and liberty, that would be a visual representation through the American flags that she created, and something that would not just be remembered for the Revolutionary period, but for generations to come.